Time+Tide and the TAG Heuer Autavia. What can I say? We go back a long way. Today we're exploring the 2022 collection. Now here we are, the Time+Tide couch. It's a slightly chill vibe today. It's the middle of summer in Australia, and it's the perfect time for us to be sitting back and thinking about the new TAG Heuer Autavia collection. It's just dropped. We're excited about it. We've got some things to say about it. There's a real story around this watch, and we're going to go into that today, which is why I'm lounging back. So I suggest you do the same. So if I asked you a question, which of the three chronographs is the oldest? The Carrera, the Monaco, or the Autavia? What would you say? The answer is in fact the Autavia, which begs the question as to why it's somewhat had less of an identity in the TAG Heuer collection over the years. And that's something that we can't answer. When the watch came back for its 55th anniversary in 2017, in a beautiful reverse panda configuration with the black dial and white subdials, it was rocking the new Heuer O2 movement. We thought finally this chronograph that is such a mainstay in TAG Heuer and Heuer's history is going to have its day. But it didn't last long. The watch somewhat disappeared again until 2019 when it was returned as three-hander models with a very pilot and field look to them. So we've had a really confused identity in recent years for a watch that I think is as significant, if not more, than its more famous brothers and sisters in the Carrera and Monaco. Let's talk about the name Autavia because it has a ring to it, and that is because it is a contraction of two words, automobile and aviation, which is why through the Autavia history, you will see that it has appeared in air forces as military issue aviation watches, as well as playing a really functional role in motorsports, where it has been on the wrist of Formula One drivers, for example. So this watch is super important in TAG Heuer's canon, and it hasn't quite had its modern iteration nailed, even though we loved the 2017 comeback. We loved it so much we put it on the cover of our magazine, which is why we do go a long way back. So we are very excited to explore these watches that I have now in my possession. Now, before we move on to the new watches though, there is one little bit of history that matters, and that is that this watch was first launched in 1962 by TAG Heuer. And TAG Heuer, as we know, is the man that was behind practically all of TAG Heuer's biggest ever watch releases. The Monaco, the Carrera, which we talk about so often, and the Autavia. It was his first year as CEO, and this was effectively his first platform. So again, this watch has so much meaning in TAG Heuer's history. We're really hoping that they can land a collection that does justice to the past and gives us a bit of a glimpse of the future. So what do we have in this first drop from the Autavia in its 60th anniversary year? We have two flyback chronographs. It's the first time we've seen a flyback complication added to the Heuer O2 chronograph. And we have a three-hander version, no chronograph, with a second time zone function. So these new models represent a range of firsts for TAG Heuer. In the chronograph, it's the first time the Autavia has had a flyback chronograph function. There have been similar models to the Autavia over the years that have had flyback functionality, but they haven't been released under the Autavia banner. The first that the three-hander represents is that it's the first time we've had a dual time zone with a three-hander Autavia. We did see, as I said earlier, the three-hander Autavias released in 2019, but they did not have a dual time zone option in that mix. So we have a range of firsts here. Okay, so first impressions. How does this wear? What do we think? What's the overall vibe? Firstly, can I just say thank goodness we're back to chronographs. In 2019, the most confusing thing about the three-handed Autavia releases was that they didn't have a chronograph function. And considering that the Autavia story is inextricable from the story of chronographs and of TAG Heuer and what he's done for motorsport timing in particular, I found that really odd. So there's a huge sigh of relief. Secondly, I feel that this is really touching on more of the Autavia's history as that joint automobile aviation backstory. So I can see touches of both codes in the design. And the other faintly exciting part of what we're seeing straight off the bat is that we have extra complications and some chronograph development within the collection, which is exciting. We see a flyback chronograph for the first time in the Autavia, which is definitely going down the right direction. In terms of the look and feel, if I could be so bold, I really do feel that the DLC blacked out version evokes more of the Air Force special editions that we've seen from Heuer over the years. And this panda configuration in this model definitely speaks to watches like the Joe Siffert edition of the Autavia, and that bring that motorsport story back. So we have two sides of the coin here. We have the aviation part of Avia, and we have the automobile part in the Panda. So far so good. What about the dual time zone? Well, this one is definitely, to me, that bridge between the chronograph story and the contemporary wearer. We have a very on-trend, a black and blue bezel. That is a very popular style of GMT or dual time zone. And secondly, we have what is, in fact, for me, the most useful function of all in modern life, which is that second time zone. So we have this bridge between the authenticity of the Autavia story with the chronographs, and then we have this nod to modern lifestyles and to travel, which I think is a good fit. Now in this variation, which to me is definitely the automobile nod, we have a super legible Panda configuration, which is white dial with black subdials. We have Arabics that are filled with superluminova, and we have a nice sort of inverted out TAG Heuer logo at 12. Now these pushers, I love these pushers. They are really fat and juicy pushers to apply. Of course, we have this very fun flyback functionality where once we've started the chronograph, all we have to do is hit the second pusher to return that chronograph to 12 where it starts again. So if you're timing 2 eggs at once, your kitchen stove, you don't need to reset the chronograph. You can just hit the second pusher and you're back. Okay, some of the numbers that will really determine the fit and feel of this watch for you are the size of the watch. It's 42 millimeters by the book, but we measured an extra 0.7 millimeters for the overhang of the ceramic bezel. Lug to lug, it is 50.3, which you can see on me. I have a 7-inch wrist. This is pretty much a perfect size across the wrist for someone with my wrist size. Certainly, I wouldn't say on the chunky or big side, doesn't feel like it. However, thickness of the watch, I don't know if you can see from there, but we are talking 16 millimeters thick, which is very substantial. So certainly not a slim and unassuming watch by any means. In terms of power reserve, we have 80 hours of power reserve. It's a COSC certified Heuer 02 movement with a flyback functionality. We also have quick change straps, which is exciting for people that like to have a bracelet and a leather option without too much fuss. They are quick chain straps that have different applications depending on the style of bracelet. If it's the leather one, it is a simple little clip out from here, which is really easy. The bracelet has a quick change spring bar, which you can activate fairly easily from the back. Turning it over, we do see we have a clear case back, and we have a cutout on the base plate so you can see the escapement there. We have a nice black rotor. So that rounds out the first of the Autavias that we're looking at. The second one, and I'm quite sure about this. I believe that this is the Aut part of Autavia covered off, and this is the Avia part of Autavia. This is the watch that really brings to mind stealthy Air Force military issue watches, which brings in that second part of that contraction. Now, lots of differences aesthetically between this and the black and white version of the chronograph. Firstly, we have a really minty green lume on the hands and on the Arabics, and we have what I would call a stealth TAG Heuer logo that is black and really recesses into the dial from most angles. However, occasionally you'll get a flash and you'll see that it is indeed an applied logo. Now, the biggest and most obvious difference between these two is not only the stealthy Air Force vibe, it's also this diamond-like carbon DLC case, which is actually very shiny and glossy to the eye. Like, it really could almost be ceramic if you were glancing at this. Now, we do have a ceramic black bezel, which has a nice heritage look to it, as well as a really high gloss and a nice curvature to it as you move the watch on your wrist. Now, on the wrist, it's a dramatically different atmosphere. We really do have this combination of minty green handset and numerals with this black dial and also the glossy black bezel and appearance of glossy black case. So totally different aesthetic. I really like the night mode aesthetic that this one has. In terms of the specs, it's the same as the black and white Panda, which brings us to the 3-hander dual time. Now this does have some different specs to consider. We have a 50.6 lug-to-lug measurement, which dictates how it wears on the wrist. And we have a substantially slimmer case on the wrist. This is 13.7 mil compared to 16 mil. So we're losing a full 3 millimeters without that chronograph function inside. Obviously, the aesthetics of this watch are totally different because we don't have a chronograph and we don't have subdials. So it's an open blue brushed sunray dial. We have Arabic numerals and we have this nice contrast with the orange second time zone hand. The date's at 6, which cuts out the 6 numeral, and we have a ceramic bezel, as I mentioned, in that very popular blue and black combination. A big old crown here, which is nice to manipulate, but is definitely on the large side with the TAG Heuer logo on the crown. So this watch, again, wears really differently. It's 3 millimeters slimmer, and it doesn't have that complicated look of the chronograph. And really, this is just a great one watch for a lot of people. The steel bracelets is a nice high quality. We have a very subtle horizontal brush to the center link, so you're getting some differentiation between the center links and outer links. It isn't a fully brushed bracelet, which gives it a slightly more elevated, dressier look. And really, this is just a bit of a no-brainer. They've taken the Autavia case and put in it the most popular complication probably on the market, and given it a very handsome do-over with the Batman bezel. In terms of the movement for the dual time, we have the Caliber 7, which is a Sellita SW300, which has been spec'd up to COSC. So you have a really durable base movement that's been engineered by TAG Heuer to better accuracy. So there you have it, a long story about the new Autavia collection, but one that needs to be told, because what we have represented here, to me, is a really durable platform. I would say that the excitement may still be to come this year. We have many releases of the Autavia in store, I would imagine, being the 60th anniversary. But let me just tell this really simply. This is the Aut, this is the Avia, and this is the new. This is the way we're taking the Autavia into the future. We have the automobile story covered off with models like this. We have references to the aviation heritage of the Autavia here. And then we have what's next for the collection, which is also captured in the fact that there are new complications and that they're based around that chronograph story. In this case, it's the flyback chronograph, which is proudly mentioned, I should say, on the dial. So thank you, TAG Heuer, for bringing chronographs back to the Autavia where they belong. We feel like you've honored the celebration of our first magazine issue by giving the Autavia what it deserves this year. But what else you got? What else is coming from the Autavia? Why don't you speculate below and we will wait and find out and bring it all to you.